talk about it a little bit in the previous portion that we just read in the Torah. It speaks about a prayer, a tefillah of Moshe, where he prays for his sister. So think a little bit about what is the kavanas tefillah. What are the intentions of davening? What's the intentions of tefillah? Now, of course, the simple intention of tefillah is that you have to. We're talking about formal tefillah. So you take, let's say, a siddur. You take a prayer book. You open it up, and there's davening. There's the prayers. So there's multi-layered intentions that can be understood. And in fact, one of the things that the Arizal taught, and Chaim Vital brings down, is kavanas hatefillah, the intentions of the kavana, the intentions of what you're supposed to meditate, what you're supposed to have intentions on the prayer. So when we say certain words, we'll give an example. Let's say we say the word Baruch Atah. Baruch Atah means that you are the source of blessing. So when you think about the word Baruch Atah, the simple meaning of the word is that you are the source of blessing. But if you think that davening, prayer, is also l'tzarech kavod, that there's intention on high, that when we're praying, we're doing something that's occurring on multiple levels. That on one level, we're praying for a specific thing. Let's say a person needs healing and they're praying to be healed. They're praying for someone else's healing. But in the other level, on a deeper level, there's something that's going on a cosmic place, on a spiritual plane. And there's certain yichudim, certain unifications that occur on a spiritual plane. And because there's certain cosmic structures that are built on a spiritual level, therefore it trickles down the effect on a physical plane as well. So when you're saying the words of prayer, you're saying the kavanah, you're saying the actual words of the davening, on one level, one way of thinking about them is instead of thinking just what the words say, Baruch Atah, but you're also thinking about what these things represent on a spiritual level and how we're building, in very simple language, we're building malchut, so we're building the vessel, and davening is trying to create a yichud. This is the most broadest definition, a yichud between Zohar Ampin and Malchut, which means between a place of perfection and a place of lack. And we're saying that there's a reality that it's lack, there's a reality that's missing, and we're creating the unity between what is perfect and what is imperfect, and therefore it becomes perfection. Of course, in a physical realm, a person is deficient in health, something's missing in their own life, so that's the lack, and then there's the perfection. But we're saying that there's something happening on a much deeper spiritual level, that the kavana is what occurs to meditate on each word, each letter, what they represent on a spiritual realm. Okay, but we're not going to talk about that because that's very, very complicated, and certainly not for a half hour just to speak about what that is. But what we want to do is explain a little bit what is the path of the Baal Shem Tov. That the Baal Shem Tov speaks about kavanas hatefillah, thinking about the davening, and he says that on some level, if you think about it, just having no kavanah in a way is better than having a little bit kavanah. So let's say, for example, a person learns the teachings of the Ari and understands 80% of what the information is, but doesn't have the full information. So that's similar to a person that is learning to play, let's say, an instrument. So there's two things. Either you know so well the instrument that you don't have to think about yourself playing the instrument. That means you're really good at it, so you're 100% perfect. Or if you can't read the notes, it's better not to read a little bit. It's better just to play from your heart. So the same thing also with davening. Either you're going to work on the 100% syllable and you know the entire intentions of that result, and then it's going to be effortless, and then you're going to be able to access that place. But if you only know 70% in a way, then it's worse to know a little bit than to say, okay, I don't know actually anything, but I just want to cleave and I want to connect myself to the actual words themselves of the davening. We'll explain what that means, but just to connect yourself to the words of the actual davening without having any intention of what is actually occurring on a more spiritual realm. Because the difference between someone that's focusing on the intentions of the Ari versus someone that's not is only how much you're participating in the awareness of the process that's actually occurring. Meaning, there's what you're going to do by davening, by saying the words. Most of the words of tefillah are sacred words from Tanakh. When you're repeating these words, you're creating a certain vibration, you're creating certain realities. The intentions of the Ari, the Kavanas Ari, is that you become aware of what exactly you're achieving. But whether you're aware or you're not aware, the same thing is happening. The only thing what Kavana does is it makes you aware of this process. But in a way, if you're only aware of 70% what's occurring, and you're not fully connecting yourselves to the davening, to the words of the prayer themselves, so the Baal Shem Tov says in a way it's actually worse than not knowing anything. Because when you're not knowing anything, and you connect yourselves to the words of the davening, Baruch Atah, whatever that means, then you're connecting yourself 100% to it. It's like playing the instrument without knowing any notes, just picking up whatever that instrument that you feel you know how to play, and you play it. And it comes from the heart, and it's real, and there's intimacy. But if you feel like you're 70%, there's always like, okay, what exactly does this note mean? That means there's always a separation. So in a way, either you know it 100% or 0%. And this will be the basic difference between the path of the Arizal, which the Ari will teach the 100% path to a very elite group of students and say, okay, you have to know 100% exactly, you have to know the notes 100%. And the Baal Shem Tov said, even if you don't know 100%, it's better not to even know 70%. It's better to know nothing, just to connect yourself to the words. So now we'll explain a little bit what that means. What does it mean to connect yourself with the words? So the first thing that the Baal Shem Tov teaches, based on a verse that in the portion of Noach, which talks about the creation of the ark. So it says, Ba'al Teva, enter into the ark. That is, Noach is commanded that he should enter into the ark. Now the word Teva in Hebrew means ark, and it also means a word. So the Baal Shem Tov says, what this means is, Ba'al Teva, that a person has to enter fully into the words that they speak. Not only the words that they speak in prayer, but all words, but certainly the words that you speak in davening, when you're saying the words Baruch Atah, you have to enter fully into it. What does it mean to enter fully into it? If you're having an understanding what Baruch Atah is, and you're a third person, and you're objectively understanding what the word, that you are the source of blessing, then you're not fully entering into the word, because there's still a you that's being aware of what these words mean. That's not going to be the full depth of prayer. The full depth of prayer, what the Baal Shem Tov would teach, and really he says you should do this with all words that you speak, is Ba'al Teva, you have to enter fully into the words of Baruch Atah. So what does that mean? When you say the word, you are the source of blessing, so first of all you have to think of what does it mean, blessing. Not to think intellectually what does blessing mean, but to recognize the blessings in your life, to experience, as he's saying the word blessing, what does it mean that Hashem is a source of blessing? What does it mean that your life is a blessing? And that you can say that your life is a blessing, even though maybe your life doesn't seem like a blessing. But could you honestly say that you are the source of all blessings at this moment, and to feel the blessings that you have in your life? When you say the word Ata, and you think you say Hashem and you say you, do you think of it that Ata is an idea, that there is a you, or do you actually feel yourself that you're speaking to you, as if you're speaking to somebody else, someone that's literally in front of you, and you can feel that intimacy of that connection? So this is what this is the depth of the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Ba'al Teva means that you have to enter into the words of the davening, not just to intellectually understand what the words mean, not to understand how the narrative is and what it's trying to explain, but to actually experience what these words mean. When you say Haluk HaMalach, Haluk HaTzvav, that everything is singing praise, you have to feel yourself that you are part of the everything that's singing the praise. Not you're speaking about something that's outside of you, because you're entering fully into the words of the prayer. And that's what prayer is in a very simplistic way. But it's very profound, because when you enter fully into the prayer, you're entering into all the kavanas possible. Because the kavanah is fully in those words. And instead of having your mind that's separating yourself from those words, exactly what this word means. And what it does means you enter into it fully. So this is the idea of Ba'al Teva, that you actually have to enter into the words of the prayer. This is one madrega, one level. Then the Baal Shem Tov also teaches, which is something that's going to seem paradoxical or seem almost meaningless, that he says that sometimes you not only have to enter and daven and pray with the words, but you also have to sometimes pray with the letters. And he calls them the letters Oises B'li Perushim, the letters without any interpretation. To just enter into the letters. So when you enter into a word, let's say you say the word Baruch, right? Blessing. Which the Baal Shem Tov also teaches that when you say the word blessing, you're also creating Hamtakas Adin, sweetening of judgment. Because judgment is restriction. Restriction means something that's holding back, that it's not being revealed. Any type of din, let's say a person is ill, it's din, it's restriction. When you take, let's say, the 4 letters of Baruch, Beis, Reish, Vav, Chaf, and you read them on the page, before you read those letters, before a person animates and reads the letters, there are 4 dead letters on a page. It just spilled ink on a page. It has no meaning. It looks like a base, but until someone reads it, it's nothing. It's not a base, right? Especially if it's someone who was typed and it was printed. No consciousness. There's no human consciousness that actually created that letter. But when a person comes along and says, "Here's a base, there's a reish, there's a vav and a chaf," it spells the word Baruch. So what they're doing is they're taking restriction, which means 4 separate letters, and they're vesting it with life, with meaning. And now all of a sudden there's an opening that these vessels, these letters, which are restrictions, these are ISIS that are restrictions on their own. Each letter is another restriction. The Aleph is one expression, Vav is another expression, right? Beis is one expression, Reish, Vav, Chaf, these are all separate restrictions. When you join them together and you read them as one word, you're practicing Hamtakas Adin. You're sweetening the judgment, because before there was a judgment, there was a restriction on these letters, and you created through your consciousness and through your awareness and through your speaking that you broke open and you revealed what these 4 letters streamed together actually means a word of blessing. So this is something important, that when we daven, we're doing Hamtakas Adin. Hamtakas Adin is we're saying that there's a lack, there's something that's missing, there's a certain deficiency, the vessel is not complete, the vessel is not receiving the light appropriately. The vessel is always what is the concealment, that's the kli, that's the klipa. The light is always in a state of perfection, and the klipa is not strong enough, it's not holding, or it's broken. We're building that vessel, so we're saying there's an deficiency. Here we're actually doing this in reading the words. When you read the word Baruch, you're reading Beis, Reish, Vav, Chaf, you're actually reading and creating from 4 separate letters into a word. Which is, incidentally, this is something also that we do when you write letters. Even if you're writing a letter, you'll see that the letter is not complete. When in Hebrew you read right to left, right? But the letters are usually written from left to right. So let's say you're writing, let's say a Beis. We'll use the word Baruch. So if you're writing the letter Beis, you start from the left point, and then you create the Beis. If you start from the Reish, so Beis is three lines, right? So you start from this side, and you write it like this. Or if you write in script, you also write it this way. So you're starting from the left and you're going to the right. If you're writing a reish, which is basically a half a circle, you're starting from the left, you don't go up. You start from the left point and then you go down to the right. So the letters, same thing also the vav, and the same thing also with the chaf. You're all writing from the left to the right. Left is restriction. That's din. So if you're starting to write a letter, you're writing it in a restrictive way. When you read it, so it's from din, right? You're going gevura, restriction, that's the left side. But when you read, in Hebrew, you read from right to left. If you're reading from right to left, you're breaking the restriction of the letters, which on their own mean nothing. The beis, the reish, the vav, and the chaf, the letters that spell the word Baruch, have no meaning on their own. It's just a beis, a reish, a vav, and a chaf. They have no meaning on their own. But when you're reading it from right to left, and that's the way we're going to read, you're actually creating one word, and that's the breaking open of the Hamtakas Adin, of that restriction. So instead of these 4 letters being 4 random letters that are streamed together and have no meaning, so just by reading the words, any words that you're going to read, you're creating Hamtakas Adin. So you take tefillah, you say a person is ill, and you're praying for a person to be healthy. You're reading the letters that speak about healing, and that in itself is Amtakas Adin, is breaking open the vessel. This is a way of understanding tefillah as Bayal Teva, that you have to enter into the words. But the Baal Shem Tov says that it goes even deeper. That it's not only about entering into the words of the prayer, but it can also talk about entering and connecting, experiencing dveikus, connection with the letters of the words. The letter Beis, the letter Resh, the letter Vav, the letter Chaf, on their own, just connecting yourself to the Beis, to the Resh, to the Vav and the Chaf, that in itself has value. And the language of the Baal Shem Tov, he says that when you connect yourself to the word, which means already Baruch, which is a specific word, it's a particular word, then it has one meaning. Then you're connecting to the vessel of blessing. But if you're connecting to the letters, then you're connecting to the light that's vested in the vessel. So let me give you an analogy of this and then try and understand it. Let's say, for example, you have an idea and you want to express this idea. Let's say you thought of an interesting thought, or you have a very strong feeling towards somebody, and you want to express this thought or feeling towards another person, right? So let's say it's a thought. It's more simple. You have a very interesting idea, a very creative idea, you think it's very brilliant, and then you want to share it with your friends, so you come up with this other person, you tell them, by the way, I thought something amazing, and you tell them the thought. And the person looks at you and says, yeah, that's very interesting, but you can see that they're not as impressed as you were. And then you try to tell it to them again, and move your hand in different directions and speak in a different tone, but it's not coming through. Why? The simple reason is because the way we express our ideas is through language. That's the only medium that we have. But when we express it through language, we're also using different body language, using expressions of the hand and the tone of the voice. These are all trying to express an idea. It's not just the language itself. The language is already a restriction. It's Gevura. That's why language comes from the Hey Gevuras. It comes from the 5 levels of restriction. The Gevura of Chesed, the Gevura of Gvura, the Gevura of Netzach, and Gvura Yesod. It comes from the 5 restrictions. How do we create language? We create language through the mouth, which has through the tongue, letters that come through the tongue, letters that come through the teeth, letters that come through the throat, through the palate. These are the 5 restrictions of the mouth that create one sound and create different language. So language is already a restriction. It could be language the way spoken language or written language. If you write something, you're trying to limit your feeling and this infinite amount of passion that you have, and you're trying to write it in words. It's going to be very difficult because the language, the words that you have is a very limited tool. Even the language we have is a limiting tool. And in fact, it is a limiting tool. That's the restriction. That's the container that contains our thoughts, that contains our feelings. That's the vessel. The language is the vessel. The words are the vessel. So now let's think about this in terms of divine language, or language that was revealed to us in the Torah. You have the language, the Torah that was revealed to us, Tanakh, the Torah, the prophets. This is divine language. This is communication. There's a transmission of life, of energy, of Chayas Aliki that's revealed to us through these words. So when you take the letters, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. That's already a description, and it's something that's already defined in a particular language as certain expression. But there's something that's going on that's much beyond that. And it can only be expressed as the letters, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz, because that's the only medium to express. Language is divine expression, the medium of divine expression. Words are the divine expression. And the same thing also with human expression. It's through words. But there's something that's deeper that's trying to be expressed in these words. But the words is only the container. So take the letters that spell the word Baruch, and you say it's blessing. And we say that what the Zohar says, and this is the classic understanding, of that Baruch doesn't mean that blessed you Hashem. We're not blessing God. We can't bless God. Baruch Atah Hashem means that you are the source of all blessing. Makar kol habrachas. That you are the source of all blessings. So when we say that you are the source of all blessings, and we say that in words, in a particular word like the word blessing, it means a very specific thing to us. But when you want to, but it's conveying something that's much larger than that. It's a very loaded word. The word means blessing, and that's exactly what a word means. It's baruch. But imagine you're the person that said the word blessing, or imagine you tell your child, just as an example, you tell your child that you're a tremendous blessing in our life, right? The blessing is the word you're using, but it's much more than the word blessing. And the child says, "Oh, I get it. I'm a blessing in your life," and repeats the word. And every time this child wants to evoke this relationship that he has with you, he'll say, "You once told me that I'm a blessing in your life." But blessing is just a word. It's so much more than blessing. But the only way to tell your child is you say, "You're a blessing in my life." So here Hashem, we say, the Creator is the source of all blessings. And we want to return that and say those words. We're going to use those words. That's going to be the words of our prayer. And we're going to say, Baruch Atah Hashem, you are the source of all blessings. Just like you feel that we're a blessing, we feel that you are the source of all blessings. And you are the source of all blessings. And every blessing that I have in my life is because of you. But that's a very trivial, limited way of expressing something that's so much beyond the word blessing. So again, the first thing that the Baal Shem Tov would say is you have to enter into the word Baruch, not to understand, intellectualize, to try to figure out the numeric value and what it represents and how it's working on a cosmic order. He says if you don't know that 100%, better know nothing. Just connect yourself to the word Baruch. And what does it mean to connect yourself with the word blessing? It means not only to intellectualize what a blessing means, but to enter when you pray, when you daven, to fully enter into the word Baruch, to feel that Hashem, you are the source of all blessings, to feel it, to feel it in your bones, to feel what it means to say you, Ata. What does it mean to actually stand in front of Hashem and say you? Whatever that means to you. But somehow to make that real, that it shouldn't just be Ata, an idea that you exist as a you, but that I'm actually talking to you, because I can say you. To feel it. Then he says that if you want to go even deeper, Ata, you, is just an expression of you. It's not you. Baruch, blessing, is an expression of blessing, but it's not the source of blessing. That's the way we're defining blessing in these words. So how do we connect to the source, to the true source of the blessing? Or how do we connect to the you that's beyond the letters of Ata, Aleph, Taf, He? Right? Because Aleph, Taf, He is already just a vessel that's containing the you. So how do you connect to the light that's beyond the word? So the Baal Shem Tov says what you have to do is you have to connect yourself to the letters, B'li Perushim, to the letters themselves. What does it mean to connect to the letters themselves? When you say Ata, instead of thinking Ata as one word, actually connect yourself to every single letter as A, Ta. Instead of saying it as one word, you connect yourself to every single sound. Because the sound, in a way, contains more of the light than this is the paradox. Because in a way, the sound contains more of the light than the word. Because once I say the word, it's already an expression. Let's say, for example, in human interpersonal relationships, if you want to express a very deep feeling towards somebody, you can express it in words. And sometimes you're so overwhelmed that you start just mumbling, or you start saying words that are incorrect, or just with a little child, you speak to them gibberish. Why? Because any word that you're going to say is not going to be enough. So you use just sounds. So in a way, the sound is the pre-verbal connection that's even deeper than the actual verbal connection. The verbal is already, it's articulate, and it's already defined. It's Ata as you, as the letters Ata you. And when you call your child by their name, it's their particular name. But every person that has someone that they love calls them by a nickname, and it's a name that no one knows, or no one should know. Why? Because that's a name of intimacy, that you know the person on another way. That you don't want to say their name, because the name represents a certain person that goes outside, and people know them. The same thing is also with Ata. When we say you, Hashem is you, it's already a specific you, and it means a certain thing already. Comes along the Baal Shem Tov and says, you know what? Connect yourself to the letters themselves. Ata. Just connect yourself to the letters themselves. When you connect yourself to the letters themselves, so it's A, Ta, Ba, Ruch. Instead of Baruch, you just say each word alone. It appears that this is not only theoretically, this is the way the Baal Shem Tov taught, but it appears that this is also the way that some of his, that they actually daven this way in the house of the Baal Shem Tov. Because there's one Hasidic group, that the origins of this Hasidic group come from Yaakov Koppel Chassid, who was the Baal Tefillah, who was the person that davened by the Baal Shem Tov. Yaakov Koppel Chassid, and that's it's the Vizhnitz Chassidim. Visitors, it's probably not familiar with it, but the Vizhnitz Chassidim, they daven, or there's a tradition that they daven, and they shout letters, not words. Instead of saying Baruch, which is a very traditional way of Chassidim, and they say with a lot of kavanah, and you're saying the word Baruch, it's Baruch, and you're actually cutting off the word. So to an outsider, it seems very strange, because what are you saying? You're not actually saying a full word. What could be the intention if you're just saying Ba? Ba doesn't mean anything if you're saying Baruch. Baruch means blessing. And what does Ata means you, but if you're just saying it means nothing. But the truth is, on a deeper level, it actually does mean. It's just like a parent to a child, or a child to a parent, with two people that are very much in love with each other and want to speak and want to convey something that's beyond the language. The language is the barrier. Yes, I know that the word Ata means you, but I really want to feel you. When I really, really do feel you, it's not going to be Ata. I'm not going to say you, right? Just like if you really feel intimate with someone, you're not going to call them by their name. You're going to call them by some other name. But the name is the vessel. That's the tool to reach that place of deeper levels of prayer. So again, the first idea is that Ba'al Tevi, you enter into the words of the prayer, into the words of the tefillah, which means that you enter into the words of tefillah not as an abstraction, not what does this intellectually mean, but to experience what those words mean. If you're saying Baruch, blessed, think what it means actually to feel blessed. If you're saying Ata, you feel what it means to feel yourself in the presence of you. And then on a deeper level, to enter into the level of prayer where you're no longer even thinking about the words, but also thinking about the letters. And of course, it's not one or the other. You can move back and forth into different stages, thinking about the letters and then thinking about the words, because also the words does also create Hamtakas Adin, the sweetening of judgment, because you're breaking open things that don't have meaning and you're entering into that place. The Baal Shem Tov also talks about the stages of prayer, where ultimately you reach a place where there's no longer any words. Because even words are just an expression, even if they're not full developed words. Let's say, for example, it's a child that you haven't seen in a while. So maybe if from a distance, and if you're not familiar with the person, you may call them by their formal name. The more intimate, you call them with a less formal name. And then you may call them by a nickname. And then if you're really, really intimate, you just give them a hug. And you really want to hold them tight. This is beyond any type of verbal expression. You can't express it in any type of language, so you have to connect. So on a way, the letters themselves, when you just say without a meaning, you're connecting to the essence. It's like the hand that's extended to you, that you're embracing. And then there's a place where you reach even a point where there is no language and you can't speak at all. Now we know that there are 4 stages in prayer. That the davening, the shacharit, the morning prayer goes in 4 stages, but really every tefillah really works in these 4 stages. The first stage is asiyah, which is the physical, which is always where we start from. That's where you're present, that's where you are. And you're moving from a place of asiyah, which is separation, and an awareness of separate self and your ego, and that you're separate, me from you, you from them, you from the environment, me from God. Everything is separate. And slowly you're moving towards a place of atzilut, which is a place of more deeper unification. So you're going from separation deeper into a place of unity. Now the prayer itself actually is divided into these 4 stages, but we're going to just talk about how the Baal Shem Tov sees them as progressions in any davening that you're doing. Not that the first part of the davening is asiyah, the second part of the davening is yitzir, which is emotional consciousness, and the next is bria, which is mindful consciousness, and then atzilus, which is transcendental. So you're going from physical, emotional, mindful to transcendental. He says that when you do this in prayer, you can actually go through these 4 stages in any prayer that you're saying. So let's say, for example, you start connecting yourself with the letters, and you're chanting the letters. and slowly getting into the rhythm, ta, ba, ruch, right? And you're fully entering into the words, and you're feeling this. He says if you enter into this place, and you're forgetting about yourself, because the difference between the intellectual kavana, which is the left brain, where you're separate from the thing that you're thinking about, and there's very much an awareness of you that you're thinking about this information, versus the Baal Shem Tov's path, which is to say is that he wants you to get fully into the davening itself, is that you're losing yourself into the words of the davening. You're losing yourself in the words of the prayer. It's no longer you're praying, but you become completely immersed in the words that you're speaking, right? You're completely lost in those words that you're praying. Of course, you have to become a little familiar with it. So even if you take one little passage at Tefillah and you repeat it over and over again, it's also fine. You're losing yourself into the prayer. When you lose yourself into the prayer, he says you're going to move through these stages, because you start off, which is a strong sense of separation, which means that you start off in the world of Asiya, that you're observing and you're saying these words of davening. As you're entering more deeper into the Tefillah, you're entering into the world of Yitzira, which is an emotional place. He says this is the place of, we'll call also the place of music. He says that a person that's lost in singing, or let's say playing music, or let's just say they're singing. He says there's a tremendous amount of pleasure. Let's say you're starting off a tune, or you're singing, or you're playing music. He's just an example of music, but let's say you're singing, and you start singing a song, and you're very much aware this is the song that you're singing, you're aware of yourself singing, and then you're just going to get completely lost in the song, no one's around, and you just start singing to yourself, and you enter into that place. There's a lot of pleasure, because now you're moving with the tune. So there's an internal movement together with the music that you're singing to yourself. So you're no longer just observing yourself singing or playing the music, but you actually enter into that place of that rhythm and in that movement. And he says that's a tremendous pleasure, because pleasure, tainug, always comes from yichud, always comes from unification, which we spoke about many times, that the Sefer Yetzirah says that the ultimate experience in life is tainug, is oneg, and the opposite of oneg is nega separation. That the depth of an experience is the absence of I. The deeper the pleasure is, the less you feel it. The less you're participating in the experience, the more pleasure you have, until you completely lose yourself in the experience. That's the ultimate pleasure. So he says, entering into this music and feeling the rhythm and entering into the movement, you're experiencing this pleasure. There's a tremendous amount of tainug, of pleasure, because you're losing yourself in it. So you're starting off in the prayer with a physical movement. Physical movement is that you're moving yourself into that place of prayer. So you say, I'm going to, in the language of the Gemara, it speaks about a person should enter 2 steps, 2 doors, the width of 2 doors before they start to pray. So let's say it's either the length it takes you to walk the opening of 2 doors, or the amount of 2 doors. But on a deeper level, like the Maral says, it basically means that in davening you have to leave one door, close one door, open another door. You can't come in with all your baggage. What I mean is all your stuff that's going on in your life and say, okay, now I want to be in a spiritual place and I want to enter. It doesn't work that way. You first have to let go of things and say, okay, now I don't want to think about these things. Of course, later on, as you get deeper into the davening, you can reclaim everything that you let go. But you can't come in with all the stuff that you were busy with and then start. So first you have to let go of this world and enter into a more spiritual realm. So that's a movement, right? It's a physical movement. You're moving from one place into another place.
This would be still called Asiya?
This is Asiya, yeah, this is Asiya, because what you're doing is the physical movement from one thing into the next movement. Once you enter into the physical world of Asiya and you start davening and you're starting to chant the words, whether you're doing it with kavanah or you're just chanting the letters themselves, you're moving it from one place into the next, and you're moving from one letter into another letter, from one word into another word. You're entering fully into the music, into the rhythm of the davening. That's the world of Yitzira. And it's very pleasurable, it's very heart expansive. You're entering into this place that you're just following the rhythm of the davening. He says when you go deeper into this, as you're following the rhythm of the davening, the movement becomes more subtle, which is no longer this feeling that you're feeling this movement, but there is movement, but it becomes more subtle, and it's more like a mindful movement. That it's subtle movements from one place to another place, but it's not that the same expansiveness of the emotions. The emotions are becoming less exaggerated. It's becoming more quiet, more inward. And that's you're entering into the world of Bria. So it's a more subtle, more internal world. And then he says, finally, if you go into that subtle place of that movement, you finally come to a place of Atzilus where the movement stops. There's no longer any movement. And that's the place of Ayin. That's the place of emptiness. That's the place of quietness, and you've arrived. There's nowhere to go anymore. So you're traveling, you're going, moving, you're physically moving into another place. You're feeling the rhythm of the movement in terms of like the music and the rhythm of the sounds and the poetry. Then there's more subtle movement until it becomes completely quiet of all movement and it's completely still. So these four passages, normally we understand them as four separate passages in davening. So you start off the tefillah in the morning prayers. Shacharis begins talking about the offerings and different karbanos that were brought in the temple. It's a physical movement. The second part of the prayer is the Hallelujahs, where we thank Hashem and we offer praise. So that represents the world of Yitzira. Then the Shema is the third movement, which is the subtle universe of Bria, mindful, which is we're becoming aware of divine oneness, Hashem Echad. And then the Shemona Esrei, which is the silent prayer, the Amidah, which is the silent prayer, is that you're entering into Atzilus, which is the unification. This can be seen as a structure of four separate stages in davening, and you're moving from one to the next. But the truth is that the depth of this is that they're actually occurring simultaneously in any place that you're at. If you're entering fully into, let's say you're chanting Psalms, or you're chanting a particular prayer, and you start off with that you're moving, I'm going to move into this place of prayer, I'm starting to recite it over and over again, and then I feel the rhythm of the sounds and the rhythm of the movement, and then I slowly become more quiet and becomes more subtle until it becomes a complete stillness. So you're moving from Asiya into Atzilus. So everything is occurring within yourself, within you. All these movements are occurring within you in the process of the prayer, whatever passage of prayer you're saying. Again, you start off with Baruch Lateva, you're completely entering into the words. You're fully experiencing the words. And let's say it's Baruch, let's say it's a small word. You're fully entering and experiencing what it means to be blessing. You move into that place. You say, I'm letting go of all the things that I think are curses in my life. I want to enter into the place of blessing. I want to enter into Baruch. I'm fully entering into that place. That's a movement of Asiya. As I enter into the place, I want to feel the rhythm of the movement, the spiritual feeling of what it means to feel blessed. I want to feel blessed. I want to feel it on an emotional level. I want to understand it. And then I just want to be it. So those four levels you just had right now, from this moving into that place, to feeling it, to understanding it, to being it, is moving from Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, and Atzilus. And that's the depth of what the Baal Shem Tov is teaching is Baal Teva. You enter fully into it, and you completely become one with it until you become it. And there's no longer a you that's experiencing blessing and experiencing Ata. You become one with what you're experiencing. And this is the depth of some of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov.